the organization that is providing this certification and what is their reputation in the market. Right, that plays a very important role. The most reputed certification come for cybersecurity is going to be ISC, right? And they provide the certified in cybersecurity. This is a very basic. You don't need much of knowledge in cybersecurity. You can come with little or no cybersecurity background. In CompTIA Security Plus, it is given by CompTIA. It is a well-recognized IT certification. They are not as specialized in cybersecurity. Like ISC2 basically focuses on cybersecurity and a lot of the standards. They have much more stringent entry requirements for some of their exams. We'll talk about that later, right? Whereas CompTIA is much more professional. It's more related to IT experience. Uh, can be taken. Security Plus focuses on different components. They focus more on network security, risk management, as I told. Whereas ISE is more about from an architecture perspective, from a concept perspective, what is the security principles that they go into. So it is, let's say, if you can take it in a real-time scenario, CompTIA is more towards practical approach. How do you go? How do you do these certain things and part of it? Whereas CC or ISC2 based certifications are more towards architecture, right? How do you design a network? How do you design an application? What are the things that could be considered? All those things comes. Right? But CC is very simple, very basic. If you're a complete beginner and you want a reputed certification, I would prefer going with CC. Whereas CompTIA Security Plus is also good. It can be a bit more. They are a bit more topics are a bit more advanced compared to CC. But Security Plus comes in between. Right? It is not a very fundamental certificate. At the same time, it is not intermediate. It comes somewhere in between that. Right? So the amount of concepts that is there in cybersecurity, certified cybersecurity in CC is going to be very broad. Meaning they are going to cover multiple domains. They will talk about physical security, cloud, and everything out there. But everything is covered in a very brief way, nothing detailed out there. Whereas in Security Plus, they'll cover much more detail into network security and how do you manage risk whenever in the organization. And also they'll talk about more deeper into the options. As I told earlier, IC2 has a much more better reputation compared to CompTIA. If you are looking at a reputed, certification, I would prefer going with IC compared to CompTIA, right? So both of them are predominantly the same around. There are being multiple choice questions. And it covers about 2 to 90 minutes, 1.5 hours to 2 hours for that. That is how it's going to be there. The main thing that we have to see is that who is this what is the job role that you're looking at based on this application, right? Job roles usually IC2 is going to be for security analyst, IT technician, and entry level service. Right? Let's say you're fresh graduate from college or looking at getting into cybersecurity companies and you're looking at internship or you're looking at entry level jobs. CC plays a very important role. Right? So let's say if you're looking at someone with little bit of experience and you want to get into much more network security and related to stuff, uh, probably Security Plus is much more better option as far as I'm concerned. Uh, if you're looking from a DevSecOps perspective, I feel CC plays a better role out there because it covers a wider concept, right? If you're looking someone who is looking from a network security perspective, from an infrastructure perspective of the Security Plus is going to play an important. Irrespective of that, you can choose either of them. There is a little variation in the difficulty compared to Security Plus and CC. It should not take too much time for you to focus. Probably 1 month and 60 to 45, 30 to 45 days of solid preparation for both the certification. You should be able to. I mean, solid preparation, I mean, it is not spending an entire day on the, no. It is much more, casual, spending 2 to 3 days on an average, or 2 to 3 hours on a day average. You can, you can clear it easily. That is what I would feel, both of them, and very basic part. So this deals for fundamental certification. If you are new to cybersecurity or new to cybersecurity certifications, I would, if you're really not confident about taking the intermediate or higher level, I would start off with these certificates. and then you move forward. Because once you gain that understanding, once you will also gain confidence taking the certification, then move into other certifications. That's good. So what you have done with this, this is where the specialization in a particular field that comes in, right? So when it comes to web application and infrastructure penetration testing and things, there are three major certifications that are available out there, and there is three different versions also. Right? The most reputed, something which will definitely get you a job interview for sure, right? There are certain times for a lot of penetration testing roles. If you are not having this particular certification, they are not considered anymore. Right? And that certification is yours. And this is not a entry level certificate. This is an advanced level. They would like to term in their website as an intermediate level, but this is not an absolute level. If you ask, if you're new to pen testing, this is going to be advanced. If you're someone who has been in pen testing roles, and this is going to be intermediate for you, right? This is not one of those exams which is not going to be focused on MCQ. There is no multiple choice questions in this, right? It is going to be more focused on hands-on. You are going to hack real vulnerable machines. You're going to get flags in that, and then based on that is what. The exam here is actually a 24-hour exam where you're supposed to hack five machines. If you don't hack, or I think there's supposed to be 100 points, this is 70 points. But there are 5 minutes, 25 machines here, and 20 points each. You're supposed to get minimum 70, right? Meaning you are supposed to, four out of five machines have to be hacked, right, at the end of 24 hours. And after 24 hours, further, you will be given 24 hours to give a report and send it to the exam center. And once they verify the report, the grading is going to be given. So it is heavily focused on real world. And this is what you would do on a technical basis, right? Let's say if you go to an organization, they're asking you to understand the security, then try to check what is whether any vulnerabilities are there or not. You will have a most like almost 70 to 80% what you do here is what is going to be there in the real world, right? So this is basically a much more advanced people who are in pen testing, Uh, if you are someone who is a fresher in cybersecurity, you want to have a good starting package, right? If you're a college student, you want to know the cybersecurity. If you want a very good package, in initial OIS certification plays a very important. I have seen, somewhere like 300 to 200,000 rupees in India for a fresher. That is what it is going to be. Whereas an OSCP candidate who has completed OSCP, for the same role, he can get around double, right? Whatever the graduate salary, if an OSCP certificate, you're going to have double. What is the prerequisite here? What is that you need to know, right? Here, you need to have some understanding of what is happening. You should have some experience about that. Previously, this examination had an introduction part as well, where they would explain how to work on different operating system like Kali and how to use this, and it's no longer supposed. Right? So before you could take up this exam, you have to look at how to use Kali Linux, the system out there. What are the different tools out there? Get comfortable with those tools and understand what is network, scanning and what are different activities out there. That is what you could do out there, right? This is something very, very yeah, important. Right. It's quite difficult. I've seen people been trying it for a couple of years and still have not been able to complete. And I've seen people who have just taken it week and then completed. That differs. There's a lot of variation. It is entirely dependent on your skill set. Okay. If you think this is going to be very difficult, I don't want to get into that. I want to get into ethical hacking, but I don't want to deal with all those, uh, stress. And the financially also it is quite expensive. That basically will cost you around $1,600 to start off with. And if you're someone who's good, that is the cost. If you're taking more than 3 months to prepare, you charge more. Every month you have to pay for the labs. If you don't want to go in that way, and if you want to go a little bit easier, take it down. So you can go with EJPT, right? It is also based hands-on pen testing basics. It can be taken as in basic to intermediate, right? So it focus on core concepts and techniques. So here it is a 3 hours practical hands-on, but it is 3 hour exam, right? They are going to ask very basic stuff. You can scan what is the output of the scan and give all those things and look for the particular way. And that is how it is going to be there. But I don't think so. It will be as intensive as was, right? So here you are going to have not a real-time knowledge of, right? What hacking experience you need to have when you're doing OSCP. That may not be required. Someone who is having basic IT skills, how to use Linux, what do you mean by Linux service, what is a web service, understanding of that is more than a mission. This is basically, we have seen recently that a lot of people who want to get into investing, they do take up this EJP, right? So this is one. There's no, as I told, no prerequisite, it's quite easy to do. The one of the next one is certified ethical, right? It is a certification given by EC Council. Uh, It is one of the oldest certification in cybersecurity, and to be frank, that was the first ethical hacking certificate available when it started, right? And I remember when certified ethical hacker came in, you needed a background verification certificate just to take works, right? It was that stringent in the early days when it comes to hacking, right? Anything you're teaching about it. Course teaches you a lot about hacking. They go from a very basic to and they'll take it out there to there. And this is the theory based, multiple choice question. And it is keeps on varying. The more answers you answer, the it gets higher and higher, and you can finish it up. Predominantly a 2 hour exam. I've taken this exam long time back. I think probably if you're spending to 2 to 3 hours, probably you'll take around 45 days to cover all the topics. I think there are about 14 to 15 domains at that time. It covers all the domains from an hacker, right? We'll talk about cybersecurity. We'll talk about social engineering. What are the different, scanning, different phases, reconnaissance, active active information gathering. How do you break passwords? All those things are going to be taken here. It is not a The training is practical based. They do have theory as well as they'll explain from a practical perspective, but exam is not theory. So that is how it's there. Mm, This is it has lost reputation in recent years. It is not someone they would prefer EJPT as an intermediate than a CH, right? So mainly because there is it is in multiple choice spaces, right? So they think people can even people who are not able to do the activities will still be able to clear because it is multiple choice question, right? If you want to start off with absolute basic and you don't want to cut too much, go with CH from EC Council. It has a good reputation, but not as good as OSCP or EGPT. If you really are having a lot of time, you can spend 6 to 7 hours in a day, and you can spend about 2.5 months on pen testing, then OSCP is right. So it has a lot of reputation. You can demand on higher salary. And there are cases where they have hired people with OSCP without interviews also. Right? You can cut short your interview process. Right? And EJPT is something in the middle. Right? Um, EJPT is a bit more safer bet. Right? If you can, there's a good chance you clear. There's a lot of forums out there where you can join and where people will help you out. Okay. But this is about from an infrastructure pen testing and spoke about fundamentals and things about that. So, but nowadays there is a shift. Right? There is a shift in cybersecurity. Previously, if you see, there's a security analyst role. They were looking for cybersecurity penetration testers and someone with that. But nowadays, people have moved from that, right? Especially in the DevSecOps role and cloud security role, they want someone with a pen testing experience, but the specialization is not going to be in pen testing. They need to have knowledge about that. but someone who will know how to keep your cloud environment safe. What are the things that you need to consider when you're designing a cloud environment and things like that, right? So especially nowadays, all your DevSecOps environment are going to be in cloud. And how do you make sure, right? So for that, there are three basic certifications I've chosen. There are quite a few out there, a lot of certification bodies, but I feel there are three which is going to be important, right? So three of them is CCSK, Certified Cloud Security Knowledge. That is the one of the first cloud security certification. It is given by Cloud Security Alliance, right? This is the B organization that focuses on cloud security. It was designed, meaning it was established to have a standard for cloud security. And, CSA cloud security guides are very important from its cloud security perspective. Having this, even let's say you're not going to do the certification, right? Having just an explanation telling that you are aware of Cloud Security Alliance security guidelines will add weightage to your resume, right? That is the one thing. And in recent times, we have seen both AWS and Azure, which are more now. A lot of people are moving towards AWS and Azure these days. They have their own cybersecurity certifications, right? How do you secure the network, right? So, but you might ask me, what is the difference between it, right? CCSK, it is not vendor specific. First and foremost, it is for any vendor who is going to do that. And CCSK is more about foundational cloud security knowledge, and it talks about security from a design perspective. What are the things that is, what are the different components in a cloud environment? What are the things that need to be taken care? Where exactly an attacker would do? So how do you protect the points of data? All those things are going to be taken care in CCSK, right? It is not vendor specific. You can follow this the relevant concepts in each of the cloud providers out there. So it also talks about based on what type of a cloud you're running, or whether you're running infrastructure as a service, software as a service, or application as a service. uh, it is going to change, and it is going to tell what you're responsible. That is what CCSK is very good about that. But when it comes to AWS and Azure certification, these are basically a vendor specific, right? And it is basically for, let's say, there is where these certifications are going to be useful. Let's say they're going to looking for cloud security engineer. If the hiring company is focused on AWS, they're running their infrastructure on AWS, they would look for candidate with AWS certificate. But if the hiring company is working on Azure infrastructure, they'll be looking at Azure security engineers. Basically, this is for administrators or people who are managing the cloud environment. That is AWS and Azure, right? I think CCSK is predominantly from an architect perspective. Chief technical officers or someone who's there higher up who are understanding from a governance perspective, right? They'll look into that. Because this is basically we're talking about how do you protect your data, how do you manage users and their access rights, how do you monitor them, how do you monitor for incidents. All those things are going to be taken in database. Right? That is what. So what are the job roles, right? So cloud security architects for CCSK, cloud security engineers, and also compliance officers, right? People are looking at the compliance, how it is supposed to be. Compliance plays a major role to it, right? You don't have to be compliance engineer, but if you understand compliance, it will have a huge weightage for your resume because you know that this is they know that while designing itself, you're going to introduce compliance. It is not that when the audit comes in, you are actually jumping in and making changes according to the requirement, right? According to the audit results. You can actually help with auditing also, right? Say security audits, all those things. That's going to be there. These AWS and Azure are basically for their respective security architect for the respective vendors, uh, security specialists who are there. How do they design? Here, the main difference. in CSK to this thing is CCSK is not vendor, right? It's not vendor specific. But here we have to know what are the products that are there. For instance, let's say you're AWS security engineer, right? You need to know what are the different security products available in AWS. So what are the AWS firewall is there, or AWS WAF is there, AWS log management is going to be there, a lot of other things, right? DDoS protection is there. How do you enable DDoS protection? All those things you need to be aware of, right? So that is where it means. So, but I would someone with IT experience, when you're taking an exam for CCSK, there's no formal, requirement in terms of experience you need to have. For anyone that's new to cloud security or even cloud can take up CCSK, right? But I would suggest when someone who's taking AWS or Azure, who's having some kind of an experience in IT, who have been in IT for some time, officially they would tell 5+ years of experience. But someone with 2 or 3 years of experience in IT or in cloud can actually take these certifications also. Right? In Azure security, they do tell please finish of the Azure administration. Then they would do that part. For me, I would tell do the certification course for Azure administration. You don't need to take the exam. So you can save cost on that. But you did the and you have to take Azure AZ for the engineer associate. So that is the good component out there. But this is basically for auditors or security engineers who are working on products, how to implement them. Above all these guys, there are people who are going to sit out, right? Chief Information Security Officer, Chief Technology Officers, VP Security, right? Or Manager Security. For them, the job roles are going to be different, right? They are not going to be more involved in a day-to-day technical work, but they are more involved at the policy level. They are more involved at the design level. What are the things that need to be designed? How do we go about that? What are the different components to be included? An analyst would do, or a technician, security engineer would configure a particular product. But what is that AWS or an Azure product that need to be implemented? And how do we go? Right? All those design decisions is going to be done by senior security management team, right? And nowadays we don't get too many in that roles. People who are already in networking and operations are actually upgrading themselves to cybersecurity and jumping into those roles, right? You don't see too many people with 10 to 12 years of cybersecurity experience. It's very rare to see, and people who have come from large organizations. Small organization never had this kind of issues, right? Uh, so what are those certifications? Right? So for them, I would suggest two of them, CISP and CISM, right? So this is going to cover all the CISP is, as I told earlier, it is probably the most reputed certification and probably the most difficult exam to clear in my sense, right? Uh, OSCP is difficult, it is from a technical perspective, but CISP is basically you're looking at someone who's an integrator level, right? You're taking different components and combining into one thing that's going to be there. Literally, I think they're talking about 15 to 16 domains that are there, need to be there. There is an say emphasis that is going to be, it is a mile wide and an inch deep certification, meaning you'll cover a lot of cybersecurity fields. It will talk about for network firewall. It will talk about VPNs. It will talk about physical security, right? How do you physically secure your server? Is the server room and things and everything out there? And cloud security and what is application security? What is all those things out there, right? That is going to be covered in that. So that is the main thing about that. And compared to CISM, right, emphasizes more on security management, governance, and risk management, right? How do you manage risk? How do you manage security? Something at a managerial level. Is not an integrator, but is looking at any day-to-day activities, someone who is more into compliance-related issues, right? Uh, Targeted audience versus this professional involved in technical roles, security analysts and our engineers and analyst, it is, I don't think so much. It is an overkill for analyst, but they feel, people. But Someone who is an analyst with a lot of experience, then it makes sense, right? Someone who is having 2 to 3, I don't really advise them take it about that, right? CSM is professional leadership role focused on governance and things. So it's a manager, someone with a CISO information perspective that covers it. Right? Scope of it is going to cover a lot risk and security management. How do you secure your assets? Security architecture, communication network, IAM, identity access management. How do you do security assessment, right? Security operation. It also talks about how do you to implement security in the SDLC, software development lifecycle as well, right? So that is going to be there. Whereas CISM is going to be on governance, information security programs, and incident management. Let's say if a network gets hacked, right, that is going to be involved. How do you manage that hacking event, right? So, sorry, guys. You put it on the, yeah, right. So that is going to be there. Right? CISSP is more managerial. Sorry, it's more technical. And the CISM is more managerial. Right? In terms of exam schedule, I think CISSP is going to be different. Right. Right now they are computer-based testing. It is going to have number of questions is going to be about 120. It is a progressive exam, right? It is previously it was a 6-hour exam with almost 600 questions, and you had about a minute or so, 2 minutes or so for each of the questions. So it was a very detailed exam with a lot of questions. Now they changed it. It is computer based. So if you answer one right question, the next question is going to be even difficulty level is going to be higher. Then you answer them, then it's going to keep on increasing till it reaches a particular level. And if you answer any wrong question, the difficulty level goes down. And so there is a limitation for that. Based on that, there is a grading for each question, and you have to achieve that many questions. And out of 120, if you're answering all the low level questions, you don't clear. So you have to focus on that part of it. Uh, as far as I know, when I was doing research on this, the pass percentage is about 3%. Right? It is not an official number. And I have seen a lot of my friends taking up exams. And number of people who have actually cleared is very, very less. Very, very less. Amount of time they might have taken to prepare is also right. Takes a lot to win that. But if you can get it, it's an excellent certificate, right? That is going to be there. And that is going to be valid for 3 years. Right? And again, after 3 years, you have to retake the exam. If you're attending security events and things, they will give point system is there for recognized security events. A certain amount of points are there. You don't have to rewrite. You just have to pay for the exam, and they will renew the certificate. I think it's for both CSP and CSM. That approach is there. There is an entry requirement for this certifications as well, right? You need to have 5 years experience in information. That is an entry requirement of that. Without, if you do not prove your 5 years experience in information security, you will not be able to take the exam. Okay. Since you can take the exam without 5 years of experience, let's say if you've done your master's in cybersecurity or in your major in cybersecurity in your college, they will reduce in years. You can take 4 years, right? Even with zero experience in cybersecurity, you can still take CIS. They will not give a professional certificate, right? They will give an associate certificate. CIS associate is going to be, right? Once you finish 5 years, they will upgrade it to professional, not an issue. But that is how, right? So these are the main certifications, different levels, different job roles that you're looking at. There are a lot of other certificates, right? For stock, there are a lot of other certificates. And for other, let's say if you're looking into, forensics, there are different certificates for that. Different for networking, network security, blue teaming, there are different certificates, right? So every vendor, let's say if you're having a Palo Alto firewall, you need a separate certificate for it. And for Linux also, there's a certificate. How do you secure Linux and things and all. But those are all very specific certifications. But one which will have a wider scope is what I've taken, which I feel and what, based on my research, these are the certificate has a much more, lot more organizations are looking at this. So there's a better chance being shortlisted in any of the job roles, right? So, but how do you prepare, right? How do you look at the certifications, right? Uh, you have to look how much it's going to cost. System is expensive. It is not as expensive as OICP, right? So look at what is the cost you can do and what is the right of recognition, right? EJPT bit more expensive than CH certified ethical hacker, but it is having more recognition. Probably you can spend more money on that. At the same time, you have to look at what is your job role you are applying for. Right? If you're someone who is applying for managerial roles, at that time taking up OACP may not make sense, right? Because you never may be dealing with offensive security, you never do a pen testing out there. So understand what is your job roles. Look out for certification that is going to help you out in that. Right? So CCSK would for cloud may be very good, right? I would recommend, in the long term, once in 6 months or something, look at what is the product you're working. Along with CCSK, are you working on Azure? Are you working on AWS? Take up relevant security certificates. Right? You can do that. Look for the roles. Right? And then again, you can look at the job roles as well. Okay. So any questions? Yeah. Cybersecurity roles, certifications. Any questions, guys? Then can we have a 5 minutes break before we start the firewall? In the meantime, people can also ask questions of, and we can talk about other courses also. Thanks, Anish.
Hi Karthik, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Maybe I need your guidance, maybe if you can help me. So I do have like CISSP and CISM and CCSP as well. But in my current job role, I'm into like maintaining the cybersecurity standards, like GRC role. So from cybersecurity certification perspective, do you think that CGRC or C-risk, what would be more beneficial for me? Or maybe you think that CISSP or CCSM is enough
Yes,
for
I
the
would. Yes, I would feel CISSP and uh, CISM would be more than sufficient for that, right? Uh, it is basically if you are something who is looking after the organization in cybersecurity roles, that makes more than sufficient. But if you're someone in an auditor role, and then you have to look at what is that you're auditing. If you're auditing an ISO 27K, then probably auditor implementer would makes much more importance in that part. I would not think that is going to make sense, right? So, especially when you're going at are you, what is the role you're working on right now? The designation.
Basically, I'm into like you can say cybersecurity standards manager
Okay.
role.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
I think probably you're having a good certification on it, right? If unless until there is a client requirement telling that this is the certification that is required for us for you to work, unless until there is that, I don't think so. You need to. If you already have CISM and CISSP, I don't think
mhm.
you need to change
Okay. Thank you so much.
that. Yes. For someone just starting like us, some of these are very expensive. Are there any free ones you can start off with? Uh, Fortinet has some few free certifications. When you see one and one, two and three, I think so. can go with that. I think there's also Google is also having some free cybersecurity certifications. You can look into them, right? But again, the reputation of the certificates going to matter, right? A lot of times nowadays you see, especially freshers are putting out a lot of LinkedIn role that like an achievement that I've completed this training. This is the certification of completion and things like that. Unless until that completion course completion certificate has a relevant topics in that, right? And something which is going to add value to the knowledge, that is not going to be there. And if you have too many of them, then again it acts as a negative also, right? So they're looking at that part. So what is that you're learning? Are you covering a wide variety of it? Are you looking at much more deeper into that part? All those things are going to be taken into consideration, right? So I would certain times, um, again, it depends on what is that you're looking at. Are you looking at pen testing? Probably you can take up hack the box subscription and do hacking in that, learn hacking in that. There's a free subscription as well. Learn them, get a certain level of hacker level or something like that. That will have better weightage compared to CH or EJPT. Right? Not as good as was, right? That will get you there. If you want to get into cryptography, then what certification or training would you suggest? For cryptography, there is not going to be certificates in out there, right? Because you are in the wrong field for cryptography. Cryptography in computer science and IT, we only implement cybersecurity, cryptography. We are not designing any cryptography things or anything. There is a standard that is being given that has to be followed. If you want to design cryptography, you have to get into mathematics because that is more focused on maths. And people who have done their PhD in mathematics are the one who work on cryptography designing things, right? And they also work on the cracking cryptography algorithms as well. From an IT perspective, there's always going to be steps what has to be done. And yeah, probably we can send out the certification groups that we can do a question. So because I remember for cryptography, when I was doing my master's in cybersecurity, my professor for cryptography he had done his PhD in mathematics from Cambridge, right? And first thing foremost is that he told us that this is just a just for your understanding. You're not going to work in cryptography. He directly told you're not competent to work in that because you're not math. But when you go into that, you understand. Yeah. What is difference between penetration testing and ethical hacking? Both are same. There's no difference. Hacking is no longer world used because hacking basically means someone who's an expert. Hacker is basically means who's an expert in a field. It is not someone who can crack machines and things like that. So pen testing is much more, you know, with official name given to the day, standardized corporate name given for hacking. Yes, that's what I feel. There are certain people who tell red teaming is there, and blue teaming, we do complete red teaming, you're not working on web application alone. So that is a quite variations there. But for me, yeah, both of them are same. There's no difference. Someone asked in starting whether you want to go with compliance related certification. That you may not need to go with that certification, but knowledge in that would be right. RT, uh, because when you talk about that, you need to be aware. A lot of times, I'm not related to compliance. A lot of times, students do ask, what is the knowledge requirement for that? I want to get into this job role. I would suggest you take certificates. What are the required certificates for those job roles? Study the content of them, right? Study the content of them, and you don't have to take the exam, right? But it will give you path what is that has to be done on, right? Because when I started my pen testing career, there is no way what is to be done. There is no path at that time. I was in Britain at that time. Uh, some of them got even arrested for writing a blog about hacking and how to have to protect the things and all. To such cycle. Like when we started the course, we have to we have to take an oath that we're not going to use the knowledge here, and even our labs were completely cut off from the university network. It was more paranoid at that time than it is now. What is the most certification? Why is that the most certification have a validity? Example, security plus. Yes, I think it's more basically related into the certification organization making money. If they give you a lifetime certification, you don't take it and they don't spend money. So they want you to spend. OSCP is something you will have a lifetime. Once you take an OSCP, you'll get it for lifetime. You don't have to retake that exam. They do have something called as an OSCP plus that comes same exam. You'll get two certificates. One is OSCP and OSCP plus. OSCP does not expire, and OSCP plus expires after 3 years. And one more reason for it to expire is the non-financial reason is that the the knowledge requirement is going to change every few years. There's new technology that comes into play. The older technology does not make a sense anymore. For instance, if you take certified ethical hacker, there was no cloud security a couple of years back. Now they've added to that. So now it makes sense. Right. It expires. So I'm recertifying with them for the newer technology that is available now. So that is one reason for that 3 years process for that. Right. Predominantly, a lot of these organizations make right spend time. For that. So, the amount of jobs that will look for active certification can be less. Some there are times when you have taken a certification 5 years back and after 3 years it has expired. Still, it makes sense to have those things, right? You can tell it is expired, but still it shows that you have been in that particular field or something. Hope it clear the question. Uh, Someone who's starting with pen testing and GRC, pen testing and GRC are completely different, uh, com- two different endpoints, right? One is at North Pole, another is at Antarctica. I would suggest taking up, uh, deciding which one to go, right? GRC or something like it is more like a checklist. You go there, you are seeing whether it is they have been implemented or not. I remember in ISO certification when I was person who was managing the ISO certification for the organization, for my organization, they checked is there a fire extinguisher in the building. Right. They took a photograph of that, then they had a check mark, okay, this is there. They checked are we using access card or not. They give a check mark out there. They check the reception area, right? When you get inside, are they in the reception collecting the identity of the person who is visiting and are they maintaining what is the correct blocks for the queue? That is nothing compared to a technical part, right? That's going to be there. If there's a server room, is the server room locked? Is there a lock who is accessing, which person access that server room at what time? That is also there. So that is GRC is more towards management, things like that. You're not working on technical, right? If you're looking at pen testing, I would suggest start off with downloading Kali Linux, understand basics of it. If there is a little bit of cash that you can spend, go with Hack the Box subscription. They have some basic missions you can start practicing. They have walkthroughs in that. So how do you hack a mission? Go for about 10 to 20 missions. Start off with looking at, do the monkey business of the minute. Copy and paste. Copy and paste. Copy and paste. So you get used to how using the tools in that part. And once after that, then you can start exercising your brain on how to act. Right? So that I would say, for me, as an hiring manager, when I'm hiring someone with CS and EJPT is there, and another candidate is coming with Hack the Box, and there's different levels, right? Newbie, Script Kiddie, and Hacker and Light Hacker. Someone coming up with an hacker level of experience in Hack the Box, I will prefer them first compared to an EJPT or a CS. So it changes from manager to manager, but I'm more hands-off guy who's more from a hands-on person, right? My interview questions are going to be more practical, looking at from scenario based and things. So not everyone is going to be like that. So that you have to decide. You have to decide what. If you want to start something very basic and free, start up with one hub, VULN, HUB. website, you'll get a lot of vulnerable machines. You need to have a VMware workstation for that if you're Windows, and you can work on it. Right? Like, there'll be hundreds of machines that you can practice, then move on. So voice situation, things like that. Any more questions? If you're looking at someone who's looking into getting into cybersecurity and especially from a pen testing role, uh, there is a bit of decline in pen testing role. Not because there is no more pen testing openings out there. Main reason is their organizations are looking at someone who is having a pen testing role come with DevSecOps knowledge as well, right? So that is what is happening out there. So it is not going to be sufficient anymore. Again, it will help you spread better. You will be able to apply more cybersecurity roles when you combine your pen testing skills with DevSecOps. And one more thing, a lot of people will, when they do the training, let's say Hack the Box and Walnut talks more about infrastructure security. Uh, in reality, 95% of my workload as a pen tester and a manager who's managing the lead or the taking care of the team, we are focusing more 95% of the time on web and mobile pen testing, right? Mobile hacking and web. And so that is why when you see our DevSecOps role, we have an web application security component as well as them. So we'll see from a web application, how do you hack that? What are the different components into that? How do you go from there? Don't underestimate cybersecurity, DevSecOps. It is the one which is picking up. Uh, the situation is such that I'm an auditor. I don't. I always audit other third-party companies' websites and things like what is for security features and things, security issues. And those organizations are reaching out to us to help them out in setting up their DevOps environment, right? How do you set up that? They tell they were already having a DevOps, but we want to implement security in that. How do we go about that? Even as a pen tester, you are going in that part. They're also asking us, in some organization, asking us to help them out in the design phases. Okay. So pen testing alone is not going to cut it. When a fresher, probably you can start up with that. If you want more than 1 year's experience in that, you have to be DevOps as well, DevSecOps as well. So any more questions? Can we start with firewall, Manu? Are you going to talk about something else? The wishes, should we start? Web of firewall?
Yeah, I think we can start, right?
Yeah. Give it 2 minutes. With some water. Then we'll start.
Guys, meanwhile, if you have any question, because we have already completed of our first half of our cybersecurity session, so feel free to ask any question if you have.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Please, I want to know the difference between our default for cybersecurity and the paid cybersecurity. What is different? What is the benefit between both of them? Thank you.
Well, can you talk about? He's asking what is the difference between paid and free course in service. That's it.
Yeah, sure. So the paid course is, we call it like a job ready training because uh, through that training there are many, our objective will be to make our student ready for a particular or a job role or a particular job role set. So if we consider the cybersecurity or DevSecOps of our paid role or job ready training, after the two 7 weeks rigorous training with Mr. Karthik, mm, we'll be ready for a couple of job role like tester, penetration testing tester, um, cloud security engineers, security architect, or DevSecOps engineer. Now that is like a daily 2 hours, Monday to Friday, 5 days in a week. So apart from that, you will have a your dedicated lab with you, so you can make your hand active while you are, you know, gathering knowledge at the same time. On the other hand, this free training is only having a 7 weeks weekend session, only 2 hours. And we don't have that much time and availability to showcase you, most of the practical session. So it is you can consider this one as a test bed of your main training. This one, the free training will create awareness. It will provide you a high level understanding of the particular job role. Same time, you will have a chance to communicate with Mr. Karthik, with us. To if you have any doubt on the particular domain, you will have those answers. But if you want to become a master's on that particular field, then that job ready training is the best one you can choose. So for now, we have successfully trained in cybersecurity, DevSecOps, DevOps, more than 1,000. And many of them successfully landed full-time W2 role by themselves only. And maybe hundreds of them joined through our own consulting firm. And at the end of the day, they have landed good C2C position as well. So that is the main difference. One is awareness creations or give you high level understanding. Another one will make you ready for that particular job. Did I answer you correctly? Hello.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Question. Any other question before we jump into our class session?
Thank you. Today we'll talk about firewall and basics of firewall, and we'll also look at some of the practical perspectives. Right, there's going to be an Ubuntu-based firewall, which we're going to look at it, and which is important for you to configure whenever you're running any services. Let's try to understand what is a firewall, right, and why it is going to be used. Firewall is something it is going to be available in any organization, and it is the first line of defense, is right. Is a network security. It monitors and controls incoming traffic and outgoing traffic, and firewall acts as a barrier. right? No, normal way we can think about is that there may be an office premise and there's going to be entry point. Now there an exit point out there where they are going to check whether a person is supposed to be allowed inside or not. And then if he is having the permission, he'll be allowed. And if that person is not allowed, he does not have the permission, he's going to be blocked. That is what it is going to do. Uh, but how does it work? Right? It is going to look at analyze the packets that are coming out there and it matches a certain specific rules of okay, other traffics are blocked and things like it's going to happen. Protects network from threats, they prevent unauthorized access, they safeguard sensitive data. That is the purpose of. So when you're talking about what does mean by network packet analysis, right? Any packet, let's say when a device, when two devices sends data between themselves, let's say there's a client and server, every data that is going to be taken, that sent is called as a packet. Okay. PACKET. And there are every packet some basic features are going, right? It is going to have the source IP address. It is going to have destination IP address because this IP address is like an address. It knows how to reach to the server and how to come back to the client that is going to be there. And also there will be something like a port number out, right? So let's say server may be having multiple applications running or multiple services running, right? So for instance, there may be HTTP server, web server, and SSH server. When a packet comes inside the network, how does the server know which packet the packet belongs to which service? Based on the port number, it is going to know which one it is sent. Right? For instance, port number 80 is going to be for HTTP and SSH is going to be 20. If the packet contains 80, it will send it to HTTP. It is going to be there and it's going to send it. So a firewall, typically what we call here is a network firewall, right? When we're talking about general firewall, we always talk about network firewall because there is an application firewall and email related security practices that is not being covered here, right? Because it is called as a network firewall because it is looking at IP addresses, right? And it is looking at port numbers for doing the activity out there. So based on this, it is going to taking into consideration and analyzing these components of the packet in the network traffic is going to make its decision now. Right? For instance, we could tell if the packet is coming from a particular IP, let's say 10.10.10.10, it will tell allow and rest deny. Right? So what is going to happen here? If the packet is coming from a device which is having IP address 11.11, this is going to drop the packet. It is not going to allow the communication to take place, and that is how it is going to work, right? It has a lot of basic stuffs. We'll look into that today, right? How it is working on things. We will see that part. So this is what it means by packet analysis. What are the other things, right? So importance of firewall is data protection, prevents data breaches, safeguards sensitive information from theft, right? Malware blocking can also be done. In certain times, what happens is that a system which is inside the organization may be infected with a Trojan. So I can prevent some kind of activities from giving access through the internal network to an hacker. So that can also be prevented. And I also control access control here. I can tell only authorized people can access the services or communicate with other devices in the network. Others are not going to be allowed to do that activity. So that is how this is going to be taken into consideration. So there is something called as a stateful firewall and stateless firewall, right? There is also something called as a trusted side and untrusted side. We'll talk about both of them. It is talking about stateless, it analyzes packet individually, it does not retain information about the past. In stateful firewall, it is telling it is analyzes the entire connection state, it tracks ongoing conversation and analyzes it. So what does exactly this mean? Okay. So let's look from a diagrammatic perspective. to draw a diagram rather than left side, which will work better. So firewall will typically have two sides. Okay, one is the internal network and one is the external part of the network, right? So anything that is going to be right on the left side here, which is not connected to the internet, internet is always going to be represented using the cloud. So that's how it is going to be taken into consideration. Also. Let's say there is a device here, and this device is going to connect to the server that is going to be in this network. So this is our firewall. This is our firewall. So this is going to be called as the internal network, right? Because this is the network I want to protect, right? This is the network I want to protect. And this is going to be called external network. And this is where attack originates, right? Because either this could be an hacker machine sending the packet via here, or it could be someone sending out here, all those things. This side of the attack is not witnessed. So what it's going to do is that they're going to consider something called as a trusted network and trusted. So there is a default rule out here. What is the default rule? Allow all communications from inside, meaning the trusted network, to untrusted network. Right? If the communication is starting from here, it is going to be allowed by default. The same way, if the communication is starting from untrusted or outside network, right, and coming inside network, this is going to deny all traffic. It is not going to be allowed inside at all. Meaning, let's say I'm doing a ping command. I'm going to do a ping command from here to this device. The packet is allowed to pass through out of here. Let's say there's a ping command from here to this machine. When it reaches here, this is going to be dropped. That is scenario for that. So that is the basic understanding of how the firewall default rule is going to happen. Right? So now let's understand from stateful firewall and stateless firewall perspective. Right? This is the default rule. It is going to allow all traffic from inside and it is going to deny all traffic going to from the coming from the outside. Now, let's say this is going to be stateless firewall. You remember? Going from here is allowed, coming from outside is denied. So now let's say particular device sends a request. Which device? To this device. So you remember, I'm going to be allowing from here to here. So it goes from here, it goes via internet and reaches the destination machine. And destination machine does the processing of that request. And it sends back a reply. Right? When it reaches the firewall, what is going to happen is that this is going to be dropped. Right? Why is it going to be dropped? Because it says anything from outside to inside, it is going to be blocked. If I want to allow this particular thing, right, I have to write a rule. Yes. Rule allow. Right, let's say let's use IP address 1.1.1 and 14.14.14.14. I have to write a rule now. If the communication from 14.14.14.14 to the IP address 12.1.1.12 allow. Right now, next time when it comes, this rule is going to be satisfied and it is going to display. Problem here is that this is going to be a management nightmare. It is very difficult. I need to know in advance what are the devices I'm going to connect, right? And this is going to be very hectic. And that is why if you see, if you go about 7 or 8 years back or even 10 years back, it was not possible to access Google or any external networks out of your organization because they had to write a specific rule for these devices. when they could not control some, right? Someone, also let's say this is not a regular user that is coming, let's say is a vendor, but I don't want to give him access on a regular basis. But because of this situation, the default behavior, this is going to be not possible. I have to give him up, right? And this is a major problem when it comes to that. So in order to overcome this situation, what they did was they came up with the logic of stateful firewall, right? So meaning the firewall here become more intelligent. We start tracking the packet that's going. The default behavior is still going to be there. Anything going from inside is allowed, anything coming from outside is denied. But here it is going to look at the state of the packet. Let's say I'm doing the same communication. I got a packet that needs to be sent to this. First reaches the firewall. Now previously firewall is just send it across, but now it does not do the same thing. What it is going to do, let's say we spoke about 1.1.1.1. So now what it is going to do is that it is going to maintain a table, right? Where it is done 12.12.12.4 is sending the packet to 14.14. So the connection initiation is happening from inside out. Now what is going to happen? This packet is going to go to the 14.14 machine. And when it comes back to the firewall, it checks this through. And it sees that the communication was actually initiated by 12.12.12. So this is a reply for that. So it knows I need to allow the packet to go through this. So it is looking at the state of the packet, whether the packet is originating or it is a response. All those things can be taken care of here. Now let's assume this is the device that is going to be allowed. It is initiate a connection, right? When this comes, the packet from here that reaches the firewall, firewall will check the table. That is the state table that is going to be there. Check and will see there is no connection initiated from any of the devices in the network because here it could be multiple devices, right? That is going to be there. None of the devices has initiated a connection to 14. So this packet is a fresh initiated from outside. So what does the default behavior say? Anything going from inside is allowed, anything coming from outside is removed of that. Right? And this is what is going to happen. This packet is going to be dropped. Remember now, I don't have to write a rule allow 14.14.14.14 when it is reaching out to 12.12.12. The default behavior is going to be there, and I don't have to deal with unwanted rules in the firewall out, right? Anything that is going to be presented out here that is going to be taken care of as well, or easier to manage also, right? Since number of rules are significantly reduced, it is easier to manage. I don't have to give explicit access to devices that is don't have any business in my network. And that is what is very much important. Right? When it comes to firewall, in this example, what we're going to talk, going to talk about the firewall called UFW, uncomplicated firewall. It is a basic firewall. Okay. When it comes to an enterprise level, you're going to have an enterprise level firewall. It could be from Cisco, it could be from Palo Alto, it could be from Checkpoint. These are the major vendors in, but they provide lot more features, lot more control over it. And we can also establish VPN communication from them, right? How do you secure and things and all. Whenever you're connecting to the organization, your organization, you may be connecting to via Cisco and you connect some other VPN based where it will give you access to your company network from your home, right? That is possible via the firewall that is looking at the edge of the network that is sitting at there in edge of the network that's going to be there. That's going to be there. Amount of configurations, amount of dedicated engineers required for managing this firewall to run smoothly is very important. These are going to be, and this is basically a blue team activity. Right? Blue team meaning they are more into defense. They will always configure. They always monitor the logs. They can look at who accessed what and then make a decision based on that. Right? It is always important to periodically look at the rule sets that has been given out there in that making changes if required. That is what stateful and stateless firewall is going to be there. It is always important to know about this. Nowadays, 90% of the firewalls you will get both paid and almost all that new products are there. It's going to be stateful firewalls. Stateless firewalls are still there. Those are the firewalls which were there uh, brought by companies long term back and still they are running those services. Right? But that becomes an issue. You don't have to. Managing them is a bit difficult. So default is deny all incoming, allow all outgoing that is going to be there, log all traffic. It is the major thing. Everything is going to be logged. We also spoke about trusted was untrusted sites in the firewall. What are the best security practices when it comes to firewall? Always regularly update your firewall. Make sure it is running in the all the new bugs. Everything is up to date. Periodically review the right rules that is being given out there, and also make sure the password that is used for configuring the firewall is of good quality, right? A lot of times we have seen in organizations they will have a very good, very capable firewall, and it is the way they're configured is very neat, right? We are not able to compromise the network at all. Nothing goes inside. None of our hacking attempts are successful. But what happens is that there will be configuration dashboard access to this firewall that they may be running it on a default port. They may be running on a default username and password, right? In one situation, the firewall kept, forgot to change the service default username and password. They had created admin and they had some random password of the not a very predictable password. We were able to brute force it and gain access to their network, right? Once we are inside the firewall, what we did was we created our own rule where it allow access for my machine out there, right? And once that we were able to completely look at what is inside the network, then go through it. Then probably in some cases we were able to compromise one of the servers as well, right? The server was vulnerable, right? But if they had kept the firewall configured in a proper way, I wouldn't have been able to compromise that firewall, right? That is why it is important. Having firewall is very, very key there. Not only that, having a multi-layer approach, right? For instance, this is enterprise level firewall, right? You will have a system level firewall as well. So that is what we are going to talk now. At your Linux terminal, Linux service, will have a built-in firewall. So we are going to configure. So if someone is hacking this firewall, they have to add the firewall at the server also to do that. Meaning it is a double lock, right? Having a double lock will increase the complexity of the attack and it might give us enough time to the defense team to give enough time to predict there's an attack to identify the attack and and not make sure the attack is not successful, right? So that is the scenario of it. So how do we configure this part, right? This is going to be configuring. This is not going to be simple. Setting up them also is not going to be simple, right? So usually. A lot of training goes on. There's a lot of certifications as well for the vendor specific, like Palo Alto and Checkpoint, that is going to be there. But we'll look at from the Ubuntu firewall because that functionality is going to be very, very similar in right? So for that, to practice this, we are going to use two virtual machines. Right? One of the virtual machines is Kali Linux, where we are going to try to look at. We're not going to do any hacking activity. Okay, looking from an access point. The Kali Linux is going to work as a client here, and we also have an Ubuntu Linux server up here, which is going to act as a server. And then we'll configure the Ubuntu firewall and see how things are working in it. Okay, let it start. Sorry about my voice today. I'm having a really cold. Let me. I have already pre-configured this firewall and then pre-installed three of the services out. Right? So here we are looking at two different services. One is the HTTP service and SSH. Right? SSH is a remote access. Right? I can try to control my server from there, whereas an HTTP is a web server. That's what we'll see how it's now. Take your time. It's a minute. Our main course also depends predominantly on lab based. Any concept that is going to be taught will be focused on lab. Since this is an predominantly cybersecurity role, it would be a very ideal situation to work on virtual machines, right? Running your attack vectors on a public cloud may not be a good security practice. Once we understand all those things, probably then later we can move there. There's some issue with the virtual machine out here. Let's put machine. So let's see is our default services are installed or not. That is our HTTP and SSH. For that, we have to use system control status Apache to check which service is running. This Apache is not installed. Let also look for SSH as well. I think both of them are not installed on. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to install these two services. There are a few other services I will install for my ease of use in my system. So I'll do sudo apt update first before I could run any installation. Let this work. Now I can run the installation process. It's going to be sudo apt install Apache, the web server, SSH, and I got a few other things as well which I want to install. It's going to ask permission to install. I'm going to enable the permission. It will take a couple of minutes at least. Yeah. This machine is working. So now let's look at system CPF status Apache. And do it again on this machine. This is basically a lab machine designed for this today's lab. So now you can see a default web application will be running in my machine. Right? If I give localhost here, you can see the default website is running on. Let's it's still installing this. Yes. Now it's see this is the default page. You can add a code for this for your website, but this is going to be running on port number 80, and it is also going to have an SSH service running on it. So you config what is the IP address. IP address is 192.168.178.130. Right. For instance, see that web page is accessible from my Kali Linux client as well, and I will be able to connect via SSH and the commands there. So can give SSH student at 192.168.178.130. Prasan, this is right. The password for that is going to work. See, this is the exactly same machine as this one, right? DSO7, whatever is there, that is there. I can do any activities from here using my SSH, right? So I can see if I can do make dir one folder one I've created and come back and see this is going to tell us available. So now you may be asking Karthik, you told there is a firewall, Ubuntu firewall, uncomplicated firewall on Ubuntu. Why it is allowing anyone to connect from outside, right? This service is coming from my other machine and still I'm able to run both the service on, right? This should not be the case. Why is that happening out here? The scenario is very simple out here. What is happening is, let's look at whether the firewall is running or whether the firewall is enabled or not. In Ubuntu desktop environment, that is going to be in inactive state by default, right? That is going to be inactive state by default. I can enable it, right? Sudo ufw enable, and this is going to enable the firewall. So what is going to happen when you enable the firewall? By default, allow any communication from inside to outside, right? Deny from outside to inside. So in this case, now if this is working out there, if I open my browser here, if I open my browser here, if I type google.com, I should be able to open that page, right? Because the communication is going from, I'll do it later, going from inside of the network to the outside. This is going to open, right? I'm able to access the internet from the current device to the outside. If I try to run my SSH request from outside to inside, will it allow? Right? You enter. You can see previously it started communication immediately and it was asking for application. Now that is not happening, right? And by default, if you look at here and try to access the web page again, you will see the web page is trying to load, but it is unable to load. Why? The firewall here is blocking both the communication. By default, there is no rule that is going to allow you for that, right? So it is not going to be allowed for you. So how do I overcome this? So because certain times this is required. You're adding a web server, everyone should be able to use it.
Mr. Karthik,
Yes. Yes.
there is one question in the chat box.
Okay, let me go. Uh, VMware app is a virtualization tool out here where, let's say, you want to simulate a network, all right? You want to simulate a network, you want to simulate, practice a lot of things out there. That can be done using your VMware tool. So here we can run multiple virtual machines, and you can see I can run a Windows operating system. I can run multiple Android, sorry, not Android, uh, Linux operating systems out there. I can run dedicated machines. So these are, instead of me individually installing the Linux operating system on my machine and do a dual boot, right? Usually you might have seen in your college times, if you want to run both Linux and Windows, you have to install it on the same disk, and it is going to be a bit of a problem because every time you want to use Linux, you have to shut down the Windows and go there. Then you have to do, and this is one way of doing overcoming that, right? So here you can directly create a virtual machine. You can download a virtual machine and run from it, right? This is especially very good for practicing purposes. Let's say you are working on things you don't want to continue with that, you can easily delete it. Uh, all those things can be done. This would be a very good, in the course we do talk about this, help the students to set up the virtual machine initially. Uh, you can practice Linux and lot other related to Linux on virtual machines. You don't have to worry about it. It makes it much more easier. And you can try different variants of Linux also. On Windows also you can also install Windows virtual machines. That was clear. If that is not clear, probably then we'll have to look at one more session where you can understand that functionality much more better. Right. This is technically I've created two machines. One can be act as a server, one is acting as a client. This machine would have got a public IP address. Anyone in the world would be able to communicate with this machine. This is actually an operating system running on that. Right. That is how it works. Hope it was clear. Any more questions, guys, related to this or anything related to firewall? Probably we can do some YouTube videos how to set up VMware workstation, what are the things you can do, and how to install Linux, some of the time and upload it. Probably can be as prerequisite for running Linux. So now we're talking about this here, the connection is timeout. Default is once the firewall, anything from outside is blocked. Okay. So, but how we are going to allow this? Because this is a server that needs to be running and we need to be able to allow access. But it does not mean that your your server may be having many ports that are open. You can only port open certain port, right? I can tell I can only open port number 80. Then SSH connection will be dropped, but port 80 people will be able to access the website. So let's look at how do you add a root to that. For instance, for that you have to be sudo ufw allow port number 8 we have that should be TCP/IP communication. It is telling the rule is added, so we can do sudo ufw status. You can see it is telling from anywhere, from wherever that could be allowed. Allow the communication is for TCP on port number 8. So let's say if I do refresh this, the page should open up for me because port number 8 is allowed. Now it is working, right? Because the firewall gives a rule out. Similarly, but if I try to do the SSH connection, since there is no rule specifying for that SSH communication, this is not going to allow transmit that communication. Right? It's still going to be blocked. If I want to allow this communication, then I have to write a rule to make sure that this is going to be done. So let's write a rule for that as well. It's very simple. And the same thing. Now I need to know the port number for SSH. That's going to be 22. Right? Just enter. The rule is added. Now if you come back here and rerun the SSH command, see the communication is allowed now. I can run the communication remotely. right? Configuring firewall, this is predominantly how it works. There's a lot of prerequisites that is required from your end, right? Understanding OSI model, what is a TCP protocol, what is an UDP protocol, what is an IP, right? And what is a source IP, destination IP, you have to look into that and understand different services that are there, right? It may be FTP service, SSH, HTTP service, and HTTPS service, and how do they work. It gives you a better understanding of them, right? If you're a system administrator or a DevOps or DevSecOps engineer, you may be managing many systems under you, and you should be able to do all this. Right? It is this step of what you'll be learning in real time. Yeah. So I think we're out of time for if you want to add anything else, but any questions here? So let's say we'll do one more activity here. Let's say we come back to the main mission. I can do it from there also. Here we can. Right. Let's say sudo UFW status. I don't want the SSH communication allow permission. I want to remove that. How we are going to do that? So for that, you have to first do is UFW status number because now it is going to give a number for each of the rule out here. Now we can do this deleting of that rule. Sudo UFW delete and give the number rule you want. In this case, port number 22 is what I want to delete. There are two lines, line number 2 and line number 4. So first I'm going to delete line number 2 and press enter. It is asking are you sure? I'm going to give yes. Again check the status. Now there is only one rule left that is in 3. Then the same thing. And delete that. Yes. Delete that. And that is how we are going to. So this is a very simple operation. We'll understand the basics of firewall, right? And how what is mean by trusted and untrusted network. What is the default behavior of a firewall? Then how do we add a rule to that? Meaning how do we add an exception? And how do we remove that rule from the rule count? Right? So I think that is it for today from here. Any questions related to firewalls? Yeah, what is the difference between a firewall and a reverse proxy server? Uh, so what happens is that it is not a good idea to expose your actual server to the internet. Okay? So what is going to happen? So typically, let's assume what is the default behavior when you click a browser name, domain name in your browser, how the communication is going to take place. Okay? Let's assume there is going to be a server out here, right? And this server is going to be connected on the IP address, not 10, this is a private IP 11.11.11.11. For a human being, when two devices are communicating, they can never use a name, right? Computers are not good with names. They need numbers. They would go with IP address, right? Can you remember IP addresses for all the servers that are there? For instance, can you remember phone numbers for all the people in there in the contact list, right? Probably you can remember for 3 to 4 people maximum. Maximum is 10 people. You can remember, not more than it. I'm not seen, right? Unless until you are a genius, you can have photographic memory. We don't remember more than that. For me, it is difficult to remember my own number, right? In some cases. So how does we overcome this? So what they did was they thought, let's overcome. We'll do a like just like telephone directory for name. Then there is a number. All you have to do is select the name. The phone will automatically call the person. But if I type here abc.com, how do I know what is the IP address? For that translation, there is a very dedicated machine called DNS, domain name server. So when I type abc.com in my browser, the browser is actually sending a communication to the DNS server. So it is telling what is the question, right? What is the abc.com's IP? And this is going to tell IP address is 11.11.11.11. Right? And then now the request is going to be sent to the server, and this is going to be send across, the reply is going to be done. Right? And you're not aware of it. A browser does a lot of activities for you, right? Anytime, whenever you're doing, it is not just abc.com. After .com, there is going to be a dot again, and there's going to be colon 80 or colon 443 that is happening for every request. That is put by the browser. You're not having to worry about that, right? It is going to take a lot of liberty in doing such activities. In similar way, it knows whom to connect and get back the result on, right? That is what is good. But it is not a good idea to always expose my public IP address to the network. So what they do that is, in a similar situation, let's say they're going to have something called as a reverse proxy. And they're going to have a server out there. Server, they're going to use it in a private network sometimes, right? So it could be 10.10.10.10, and proxy is going to be, let's assume 14.14.14.14. Now, whenever I type abc.com, the DNS server will tell the IP address is 14.14.14.14, right? This is a reverse proxy. This is not dealing, it is not, does not store the information. It is not even a website also. But it is going to happen. Yes. The browser does not know that part. So what it is going to do, it is going to send that information to here, the reverse proxy. And reverse proxy is going to look at the message. It's saying, oh, someone is trying to connect to the server. It is going to allow it that forward that packet on that, and response is going to be taken out. And now that response is going to be forwarded back to the client. The client will never know what is the actual IP of it. And this reverse proxy can be done many ways. We can set up a WAF out there, or we can do traffic analysis out there, check the traffic flow and everything. A lot of things can be done while protecting the server from the hackers. This is how a WAF is going to do. That is why whatever the IP what you're getting when you connect to a domain may not be an actual IP address of the server. In fact, your server, before any packet reaches your server, may be going through multiple devices. It will go through network firewall, it will go through WAF, right? It will go to IDPS machines. It will go to antivirus server. Before, if a file upload is there, it has to check someone upload any virus into the file. That can be done. We have done it. And again, there's going to be a load balancer, and it could be anything, right? Already when basic situation only there are about 5 devices before the traffic reaches the destination. Actual server for that from a security perspective. So this is all will act as a reverse proxy. It is not going to be not aware of what is running on that. It is completely invisible to us. We don't know what's happening. Hope that cleared your questions. Well, any more questions? Any other questions, guys? Firewall is a very interesting topic. It is gives a lot of importance. They may be, especially when you go to a blue team, right? When you are a pen tester, you're called as a red team, someone who's attacking all the time. When you're in a defense, when you're preventing your network from getting hacked, you're called as a blue team. Without having knowledge about firewall working, at least the basic level, what we have done today, it's very difficult to do shots. And it is a very good place to start understanding from a blue team perspective. Going to advanced topic like IDPS or antivirus or anything, this is going to help you make things even easier. If you go to the blue teaming topics and work on it without that, it's going to be very difficult. Any other questions, guys?
So thank you, Mr. Karthik, for today's this wonderful session.
Thank
I
you.
hope, like me, many of us got high level overview of about this topic, especially on cybersecurity and certification. But I would like to add, especially in today's job market, especially in US job market, certifications holds a certain value. And even for our own consultant, we always advise them at least gather one or two certifications in cybersecurity, or cloud, or multi-cloud practice. You'll attract more and more recruiter, uh, which help you get the job or at least interview call within 2 months.
Not only that, there are certain situations you can demand a higher package with the
Mm,
certifications are there as well. So you can definitely certain times you can demand a 20% hike. A lot of organizations who are already working in the organization, when they do complete the certification, usually that is, there is a hike for those companies, especially in my organization. Either we pay for the certification or there is a 10% or 20% hike in their salary when they complete a particular certification, which is important for us.
Apart from that, there are certain certification like CIS and CISSP, as you mentioned earlier. There are certain positions which we have faced. If you have this kind of certification, you will face only one round of interview. If not, then maybe three, four round of interviews. So, because if you have this kind of certification, that means you are by uh, industry norms, they take it for granted that you are having a good knowledge and experience on that particular field. As the biggest reason is some of this certification has some prerequisites that you have to have certain number of years experience on your field and few uh, referral as well. Referral means like some investment from your colleagues. So yeah, guys, if you have any other question, feel free to ask, or else we will move to our DevOps session because yesterday, last weekend, DevOps session was very short, and if we keep that thing, shorter, then could not complete the whole our journey within 8 weeks. So I think Mr. Devashish can spend me 4 or 5 minutes. And if you have any question regarding job market, training, cybersecurity, or our DevOps training, feel free to ask.